His breath was hot against my neck. One hand gripped the back of my thigh, the other tangled in my hair. He wasn't gentle. He was desperate. And when he whispered, "You're mine," it wasn't a threat anymore. It was a promise. If that made your heart skip or your chest tighten just a little, go ahead and tap like. And if you want more stories that burn slow and hit hard, subscribe. The next one might ruin you. In the best way. I didn't wear white. I wore a coat that still smelled like engine oil. The elevator ride was silent except for the soft, mechanical hum beneath my feet. 5th floor, glass walls, city view, polished floors that clicked beneath my borrowed heels. But all I could smell was the diesel on my sleeves, my old jacket, the only thing I'd refused to take off, even after the assistant tried to hand me something more appropriate. I didn't want to look appropriate. I wanted to feel real. Stared down at my hands. The knuckles were rough from years of lifting boxes at the packing plant. They looked wrong against the slick black folder in my lap, which held the contract that would change everything. Marriage license, non-disclosure agreement, confidentiality clause. My name, printed in sharp black letters. Clara Jean Bennett. Future wife of a man I had spoken exactly 7 words to. "Where do I sign?" I had asked him. "Bottom right." That was his only reply. He didn't even look up. The first time I saw Ethan Voss, he stood in the doorway of my father's hospital room, tall, sharp-lined, wearing the kind of stillness that made you nervous. His jaw was a study in restraint. His eyes were pale gray, the kind of gray you see before a storm hits the mine. I didn't know his name then, only that his company, Voss, Logistics, was wrapped around the mess my younger brother Kyle had stumbled into. A stupid night, a stolen truck, a file he wasn't supposed to see. And now, a threat too dangerous to speak aloud. Ethan didn't threaten. He offered. "You, marry me." Kyle disappears from the paperwork. He gets a new name, a fresh start. I get your silence. You get my protection. I asked if I had time to think. He said, "Time runs out tomorrow morning." And now, here I was, holding a black folder full of silence. They didn't call it a wedding. They called it a signing. The legal team arranged it in a boardroom overlooking Midtown Manhattan. White marble, stainless steel fixtures, a wall of glass behind him. The man who now owned my name sat at the head of the table, pen in hand, not looking at me. He wore a charcoal suit, pressed to perfection. His hair was dark, short, clean-cut, hands strong, calm, cold. No ring-bearer, no music, no vows. Just a brief nod from the notary and the scratching of a pen. "You're Mrs. Voss. Now," said the lawyer beside me, "you may return to your assigned residence." Assigned, like a ward, like a witness in hiding. I didn't say a word. I stood, the contract still warm in my hands, and followed the driver out. The penthouse smelled like cedarwood and silence. It sat atop a tower that looked down on the city like it didn't belong to it. The elevator opened into a hallway of glass and soft gold light. I took a deep breath, stepped inside. No staff, no flowers, just quiet. Then I saw him, Ethan, by the window, pouring something dark into a crystal glass. Whiskey, maybe. He turned slightly when I walked in, not quite facing me. Just enough to speak. "Your room's upstairs, last door on the right. Don't touch the 3rd floor. Don't leave without telling someone." That was all. Then he raised the glass, took a sip, and went back to staring at the city. I climbed the staircase like I was entering someone else's life. The walls were bare, the light dim. My room had a bed, a closet, and a floor-to-ceiling window that overlooked the river. It was beautiful, but it felt like a showroom, untouched, unfelt. I sat on the edge of the bed and finally exhaled. My hand shook as I pulled the velvet box from my coat pocket. Inside it, a ring, platinum, heavy, smooth, no engraving, no meaning. I slid it onto my finger. It felt cold, foreign. I stared at my reflection in the glass. Dark circles, tense shoulders. A ring on a girl who had just sold her silence. And maybe her soul. I didn't cry. I thought I would. But no. I lay down fully clothed, my coat still on, boots unlaced. I stared at the ceiling for hours, waiting for something to feel different. It didn't. But just before sleep pulled me under, I heard footsteps outside my room. Slow, firm. Ethan's, maybe. Then they stopped. Right at my door. A long pause. 1 heartbeat. 2. And then he walked away. A cage with silk cushions is still a cage. The morning light filtered in through the floor-to-ceiling window like it had permission. I hadn't given. I opened my eyes slowly, the ceiling above me still unfamiliar, sterile, too white. For a second, I forgot where I was. Then I saw the ring, still on my finger, still cold, still his. I sat up and peeled off my coat. The air smelled faintly of cedar and something more clinical, like whatever made this place elegant had been sterilized of warmth. The closet had clothes in my size. Tags still on. Dresses I would never wear, shoes I'd never pick. All arranged like a display, like I was being presented, not dressed. There was no breakfast, no note, no one waiting to greet the new Mrs. Voss. I wandered downstairs, bare feet, padding across marble so clean it looked untouched. Every surface gleamed. Gold fixtures, sculpted furniture. A piano no one played. Walls too quiet. This was wealth that screamed, "Don't touch me." He wasn't there. Later that afternoon, a woman showed up, mid-40s, impeccably dressed in gray, hair slicked back like a blade. "I'm Maria, house liaison. I don't live here, but I manage staff. There are none currently active, per Mr. Voss's request." She handed me a schedule typed in clean Helvetica font: breakfast 7:30, gym 9 turn, lunch optional. Dinner delivered. Curfew 10est. I stared at it like it was a prescription. Maria offered a polite smile. Not warm, not cold. Just rehearsed. "If you need anything, text this number. Avoid the 3rd floor. Do not attempt to leave without clearance." Clearance. I wasn't a wife. I was a threat with good posture. The days that followed blurred. Mornings bled into afternoons in silence. I walked the halls like I was haunting them. Read books I couldn't finish. Ate food I didn't taste. I would catch my reflection in the dark glass sometimes, hair brushed, eyes hollow, and wonder who that girl was. The version of me who'd learned to disappear without ever leaving the room. Ethan didn't speak to me. Didn't dine with me. Sometimes I heard the elevator at odd hours, a door closing down the hall. Once, I saw him through the glass wall, out on the terrace at midnight, shirt sleeves rolled up, phone in hand, pacing like he was fighting ghosts. He looked alone. Not like a man who enjoyed solitude, but one punished by it. On the 5th night, I broke a rule. Not on purpose. I just got tired of breathing recycled air. I slipped out, hoodie over pajamas, walked down to the street. Just wanted to smell asphalt, see people, be someone again, even for 5 minutes. I didn't get far. 2 black-suited men were waiting by the lobby door. One stepped forward, spoke into a small device on his collar. Within seconds, a sleek black car rolled up beside me. I didn't ask who sent it. I knew. By the time I returned to the penthouse, he was waiting. He stood by the fireplace, one hand resting on the mantel, the other holding a glass of something amber. The light caught the angles of his jaw, his eyes unreadable in the shadows. You left. Without permission. His voice was quiet, controlled, but it vibrated with something dark beneath, like a wire pulled too tight. I didn't answer. He stepped closer, just one pace. Don't mistake this for freedom, Clara. You live here because I allow it. You breathe because I allow it. I should have been afraid. But something inside me, something raw, something cornered, snapped. Then maybe you should have married a dog instead, I said flatly. Silence. He didn't shout, didn't react. He just looked at me. For the first time, really looked. Not as a contract, not as an obligation, but as a woman with sharp edges he hadn't expected. And for a breath, just one, his composure cracked. I left him there and went upstairs. My chest was tight. My palms were cold, but a strange kind of electricity pulsed through me. Not fear, something closer to defiance. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay on top of the duvet, staring out at the city, wondering how I had become the most invisible version of myself in the most visible place on earth. I thought about my father, about Kyle, about the day I said yes. I hadn't been brave. I hadn't even been noble. I'd just been cornered. But now I was inside the lion's cage, and the lion had just blinked. He said I was his. But that night, he touched me like he didn't believe it himself. I didn't notice the fever until my hands started trembling. I was standing at the window, trying to drink tea that tasted like nothing. My limbs felt heavy. My skin burned from the inside. I pressed my palm to the glass, hoping the cold would anchor me. It didn't. By mid-afternoon, my breath was short. My vision kept pulsing. I curled up in bed, still in the clothes from the night before, and told myself it would pass. It always passed. My body had been through worse, but hours slipped away, swallowed by shadows. By the time the room blurred, the city lights outside had turned to streaks, and my thoughts scattered like ash. Then, black. I woke up to the sound of ice clinking in, a glass in a low voice muttering something I couldn't catch. The lights were off, except for the soft gold from the hallway spilling across the floor. I was soaked in sweat. The sheets tangled around my legs. My head throbbed and my throat burned. Then I felt it, pressure on my hand. Fingers. Warm. Large. Holding mine. I blinked. Ethan. Sitting in the chair beside my bed. Elbows on his knees. His suit jacket was off. Sleeves rolled. Tie loosened. His head was down. But his hand gripped mine like he was afraid I'd disappear if he let go. I wasn't dreaming. For a while, I didn't move. I just watched him. His profile was sharp, all bone and shadow, but there was a crease between his brows that wasn't usually there. His other hand rubbed at his jaw like he was trying to grind the tension out of it. He looked wrecked. Not drunk. Not angry. Just tired. It hit me then. He hadn't left. He'd been here, watching, waiting, caring. I shifted slightly and his grip tightened. He looked up. His eyes met mine. And the mask shattered. Clara. He said my name like it was a secret, like he wasn't sure he had the right to say it. I swallowed, voice rough. You're still here. He didn't answer right. Away. His gaze swept my face, my forehead, my lips, the damp hair clinging to my cheek. Then he stood, moved closer, and sat on the edge of the bed. He reached out, slowly, like he was asking permission with his eyes. Then he touched me. not like a man claiming his property, like someone afraid to hurt something fragile. His knuckles brushed my cheek, tracing the heat. His fingers hovered at my temple. My skin burned under his touch, but I didn't pull away. "You're burning up," he murmured. I couldn't stop staring at him. This was the man who had bought me, ordered me around, caged me like a secret. But now his voice was soft. His hand was trembling. His breath caught every time I blinked too slowly. "Why are you here?" I whispered. He hesitated. Then he said something that didn't make sense until later. "Because I don't want to watch someone vanish again." He stayed all night. When I drifted into fevered dreams, I felt a damp cloth against my forehead, the sound of ice cracking in water, the rustle of his shirt as he adjusted my blanket. When I woke in fragments, he was still there, reading something on his phone, or pacing the room in bare feet. Once I stirred, and he was asleep in the chair, head tilted back, one hand still tangled in mine. It was the first time I saw him without a shield. And he looked young, not by age, by ache, like a boy who'd lost something and never found it again. By dawn, the fever broke. I woke fully to sunlight cutting across the floor and the heavy stillness of morning. My throat was raw, but the fog had lifted. I sat up slowly. Ethan was still there. His shirt was wrinkled, hair slightly mussed. He was watching me, expression unreadable. I licked my lips, unsure. Did I say anything weird? He shook his head. "Once, you talk in your sleep, but not nonsense." He stood and poured water into a glass. I took it, our fingers brushing. Something passed between us then. Not heat, not electricity. Something deeper. Recognition. Like we had stepped out of the roles we'd been forced into, and for a moment saw each other as we truly were. I cleared my throat. "You didn't have to stay." His reply was immediate. Quiet. "I know." He took the glass back, set it down, turned to leave. But just before he reached the door, he paused. And then, without turning back, he said, "You don't belong in this cage, Clara. I know that, but the world outside it isn't safe either." Then he left. I stared at the door for a long time after it closed. That night had changed something. He had touched me, not to possess, but to protect. He had stayed when he didn't have to, spoken softly, when silence had been his weapon. It didn't make sense, and yet, my body still remembered the warmth of his hand, the brush of his fingers, the rasp of his voice when he said my name. Not like an order, but like a question, a plea. He touched me like I mattered. But love, if it existed at all, doesn't grow in a cage. I waited for him to come back. Not because I wanted him to, not because I needed him to, because I didn't know what else to do. After the fever broke, I spent 3 days drifting through that penthouse like a ghost. The room no longer felt cold, just hollow. I wore socks. I made tea. I stood at windows and stared at a city that didn't know my name. Ethan didn't return. No one said where he'd gone. No text. No note. Maria, the liaison, appeared once with vitamins and fresh towels but offered no information. She didn't meet my eyes. At night, I replayed that moment. His hand on my cheek, his breath caught in his throat. The way he said my name like it bruised him to speak it. Something had cracked open. But cracks don't mean freedom. They just mean you can see the bars more clearly. On the 4th day, I went to the 3rd floor. I don't know what pulled me there. Maybe it was boredom, maybe spite, maybe curiosity born of too much silence. but mostly, I needed a reason to feel something. The door wasn't locked. Inside, dustless shelves, a leather desk, dark walls. A study one wall was lined with photographs, black and white mostly. Ships, trucks, warehouses, Voss logistics from the beginning. The empire Ethan built out of nothing. The only personal thing in the room was a photo tucked at the edge of the desk, slightly worn, a boy, 10, maybe, thin, dark hair, standing in front of a rusted trailer with a woman beside him. She wasn't smiling. He wasn't either. His hand was clenched. I knew it was him, Ethan. I backed out quietly, shut the door. It didn't feel like trespassing. It felt like unlocking a part of the story no one had ever been allowed to read. That night, I called Kyle. Hadn't spoken to my brother since the wedding. The number he was given came with rules. No contact, no photos, no trace. But I had found a way. A burner phone Maria forgot to check. His voice cracked when he answered. Clara? Is it you? I held back tears. Yeah, it's me. We didn't talk long, but long enough. He was safe, in Florida now, working, on a boat. New name, new chance. The stupid mistake he made had been erased like it never existed. Ethan had kept his promise. He didn't owe me more than that. The next morning, I packed. Not much. A small bag, a few bills Maria had left for incidentals. The burner phone, the clothes I came with. I wrote a note, brief, quiet, final, and left it on the kitchen counter. Then I took the service elevator down, walked past the concierge without looking back, and disappeared into the noise of Manhattan like a shadow finally cut loose from its host. The first night I spent in a motel 2 states away. I slept like the dead. The second, I found a bus to Montana. Montana wasn't the plan. It was a map, a line, a far enough place where no one asked who you used to be. I took a job at a gas station off the highway, working late shifts, learning to handle diesel pumps and coffee machines. I fixed leaks in the roof with duct tape, learned how to drive stick, bought a second-hand truck with cash. I didn't think about Ethan. Not at first. But some nights, when the wind howled hard against the windows, I'd close my eyes and remember how his voice sounded when he said my name. Not cold, not commanding, almost broken. One night, I dreamed of him. Not in the penthouse, not with suits or whiskey. He was barefoot standing in the snow, hands open, calling me by name with no sound behind it, just lips moving, eyes begging. I woke with tears I couldn't explain. Weeks passed, then months. My hair grew out. My hands toughened again. My eyes adjusted to looking people in the face. I made friends with a trucker named Gina who taught me how to replace an oil filter and how to spot liars from a mile away. Most men are just polished promises, she said. You ever see one bleed for you, you call me. I laughed. But the truth lodged in my chest like glass. Because one man had bled, in his own way. I just didn't know if he'd meant it. Then came the blizzard. That night, I was driving back from a supply run in the mountains. Snow slammed against the windshield like it had a grudge. My fingers were stiff on the wheel. Every sign was iced over. And then, a figure, standing in the middle of the road. I hit the brakes. Hard. The tires skidded. The truck fishtailed. I swerved, just in time to avoid hitting him. But the truck stalled sideways across the snow-packed road, steam hissing from the engine. I threw open the door, heart pounding. Are you insane? The man didn't move. Then he stepped closer. Black coat. Frost clinging to his shoulders. Eyes like frozen steel. Ethan. I froze. Wind cut between us. Snow clung to my lashes. My chest was a war zone of shock and something darker. Hope, maybe. Regret. He was breathing hard. His lips were cracked from cold. "I had to find you," he said, voice hoarse. "You left. You let me." I didn't know what to say. The wind screamed. My pulse raced. "Clara," he said again, stepping closer. "Don't speak," I said, choking on something too big to name. "Not here." He didn't argue, but his eyes, they looked like a man who had torn through every border just to stand in front of me. And maybe, just maybe, I wasn't ready to run anymore. I ran from him to survive. He followed me to tell me why I mattered. Snow roared around us like a living thing. The truck's headlights still glowed behind me, carving twin beams through the whiteout, but all I could see was him. Ethan Voss, standing in the middle of nowhere, coat flapping in the wind, frost clinging to his jaw like glass. I hadn't seen him in almost a year. And he looked changed. Tired, weathered, but more human than I'd ever seen him. "You shouldn't be here," I said, my voice cutting against the wind. "Neither should you," he said, eyes locked on mine. But I came anyway. I laughed, breath clouding the air. It wasn't joy. It wasn't anger. It was disbelief. "You tracked me across state lines in a blizzard. For what? To remind me I'm still yours by contract?" His expression cracked. Just slightly. "No." I turned my back. My boots crunched across the ice. Couldn't do this. But then he said it. Soft, hoarse, like the snow might carry the words away. "I read your note, Clara." I froze. The one you left on the kitchen counter. The morning you left. I turned slowly. That was almost a year ago. I memorized it. He took a step forward. It said, "I'm not angry. I'm just done waiting for something that feels real." My chest tightened. He stepped closer again. And I kept thinking, what if it was real? And I never told you? The wind howled harder. My hair whipped across my face, stuck to my lips. I tasted cold and adrenaline and regret. "Why now?" I asked, voice trembling. "Why chase me now?" He didn't blink. "Because the night you left, I let you. You didn't even stop me. I didn't think I deserved to." Silence. For a man who built empires, who could bend people with a glance, Ethan looked like a soldier who had lost a war he didn't know he'd been fighting. He ran a hand through his hair, snow melting down his wrist. "You want the truth?" I came for it. He took a breath. "I married you to control a situation. I thought I could keep you in a box and label it safe. I thought I could hate you if I needed to. You did hate me." "No, I hated needing you." My heart slammed so loud I thought the storm might echo it back. "You showed up the night I was sick," I said, voice low. "You touched me like I meant something." "You did. Then you vanished." His jaw tightened. "I was afraid." "Of what?" "That if I stayed, I'd never be able to let you go." We stood there for a moment, just two people with miles of silence between us. Snow filled every pause. Then I said what I hadn't dared speak aloud for months. I wanted to stay. His eyes snapped to mine. "I wanted to believe you'd ask me to." I thought silence was safer than begging. I stepped forward. "You're not good at this," I whispered. "No. But you're here." "Yes." He was shivering now, the weight of winter starting to press into his bones. His breath came faster, not from the cold, but from something breaking free inside him. "Clara," he said, voice unsteady. "I don't want to be that man anymore." "What man?" The one who locks people out, who watches them vanish, who thinks power makes up for love. He was trembling now, not from temperature, but truth. Then he did something I never thought I'd see. He sank to his knees, in the snow, in front of me, hands bare, eyes wide open. The storm battered his shoulders, but he didn't flinch. I came to ask you. No deals, no contracts, no conditions. His voice cracked. Marry me again. Tears stung my eyes. I didn't blink them away. You're freezing, I said, my voice barely audible. I've been cold a long time. I fell to my knees too, right in front of him. Our hands found each other, raw, red from the cold, but steady. His eyes searched mine like he was memorizing the edges of my soul. Say something, he whispered. Only if you mean it. I do. Then kiss me. And he did. Not like a man claiming a possession, not like a CEO sealing a deal. He kissed me like he'd been starving, like he'd dreamed this 100 nights and woke up aching. His hands cupped my face, thumbs brushing, frozen tears, and our mouths collided, clumsy, breathless, real. It was heat in the dead of snow. It was surrender and survival and everything in between. When we pulled apart, our foreheads stayed pressed together. You came for the truth, he said. That's mine. I came for myself, I whispered. Did you find her? I think. I just did. We sat in the snow for a while, arms around each other, breath slow and synced. The wind eased, just slightly. Or maybe we stopped noticing. He kissed the inside of my wrist. I don't want a cage anymore. Neither do I. Let's build something else, I smiled. Like what? A home. The first time I was handed a contract. The second time, he offered his heart and waited for my yes. We didn't drive back that night. Instead, Ethan rented the cabin next to the gas station where I worked. Quiet, tucked into the Montana pines, with creaky floors and a wood stove that never stopped groaning. It smelled like smoke and pine resin and something old enough to have survived storms. Like us. He didn't try to touch me that first night. He just took the armchair while I curled up on the couch across from him. We didn't speak much, but the silence was softer now. Less about fear, more about space. We let it breathe. The next morning, he made coffee. Badly. Burned it, actually. I laughed for the first time in months. He grinned. A real one. Not the smirk I remembered. Not the calculating twitch of a man who always knew the odds. Just Ethan. Hair messy. Shirt wrinkled. Holding 2 chipped mugs like he wasn't a billionaire who once built a glass empire. You ever made coffee before? I asked. Only deals. Apparently this requires more heart. That day we talked about real things. About nothing. About his mother. How she left when he was 12 with a man who promised her Paris and left her in Reno instead. About my father. How he used to fix old radios just for the fun of it, even when we couldn't afford groceries. We didn't talk about the penthouse, or the contract, or the cage I used to live in. That version of us had died in the snow. By the third night, Ethan said, I want to do it right this time. Do what? Ask, not take. He pulled something from his coat pocket, the same ring, the platinum band he'd once left in a box on my bed. It's not new, he said. But neither are we. I figured maybe that's the point. He held it out, but didn't move closer. No expectations, no pressure. If you say no, I'll still love you from wherever you land. My throat caught. Because this time, I wasn't cornered. I wasn't saving anyone. I wasn't sacrificing anything. I was choosing, and I whispered, yes. We didn't invite anyone. No guests. No photographers. No polished floors or designer dresses. Just Gina, the trucker who gave me the day off and lent me her grandmother's scarf to wrap around my hair, and the local mechanic, a part-time efficient who spoke with a gravel voice and shook Ethan's hand like he was nobody special. We stood in the backyard of the gas station, under a string of mismatched light bulbs that someone had hung years ago and never taken down. A dog barked in the distance. The mountains loomed, silent and steady. I wore jeans and a flannel shirt. He wore a white button-down that barely fit. We held hands. We said words we'd never dared say the first time. "I promise," he said, voice low and sure, "to listen when silence feels safer." "And I promise," I said, "not to disappear, even when I'm scared." "You're my home now," he added, "not my prisoner, not my problem to fix." "You're my choice," I said, "not my debt, not my mistake." The kiss was quiet. No thunder. No crashing music. Just lips meeting in the middle of a life we were finally building together. It was soft and slow, and when he cupped my jaw, I felt the weight in his fingertips. How much he'd wanted this, how long he'd waited, how afraid he'd been to lose it again. When we pulled apart, I said the words I hadn't known I needed to say. "You don't owe me redemption, Ethan." And he answered, "But I owe you a lifetime." To try anyway. Later that night, after everyone had left, we sat on the cabin floor, backs against the wall, eating reheated soup and listening to a playlist from my old phone. He took my hand, ran his thumb over the inside of my wrist. No pressure, no assumption. Just that gentle, deliberate trace of skin remembering skin. "You still wear the ring," I said. "Only now it means something." "What does it mean?" He leaned over and whispered in my ear, warm breath brushing my skin. "It means I know what it is to want something, and finally deserve it." I laid my head on his shoulder. Our fingers tangled, tight. The snow had stopped falling. The fire crackled low behind us, and for the first time, I didn't feel like I was living in someone else's story. I was writing mine, with him. He didn't ask this time, and I didn't need him to. The fire had burned low, but the room was hot with everything unspoken. I stood by the window, back to him, staring out into the dark trees. My flannel shirt hung open at the collar, sleeves rolled, bare feet against old wood. Behind me, I heard the quiet click of a glass being set down. Then silence, and then his footsteps, measured, slow, closer. I didn't turn. He stopped behind me, just near enough for the heat of his chest to graze the space between us. He didn't touch me. Not yet. Clara. My name didn't sound like a question anymore, or a plea. It sounded like a vow. I turned. His eyes met mine, lit by the low flame behind him, sharp jaw shadowed, shirt slightly wrinkled from hours of leaning too close. His hands were still at his sides, clenched, holding restraint like it hurt. I stepped forward. So did he. And then we collided. His hands were on my waist, mine in his hair, mouths crashing together like we'd run out of ways to speak. His kiss was rough, open-mouthed, not careful anymore, like he finally believed I wouldn't break. I didn't want him to. Be gentle, I wanted him honest. I yanked at the buttons on his shirt, half of them coming undone, half torn open. He hissed into my mouth when my fingers scraped down his chest. My back hit the window, cold glass on hot skin, and he pressed against me like he wanted to burn through the wall. "Tell me to stop," he breathed. "No." I grabbed his shirt, pulled him closer. "Don't you dare." He lifted me like I weighed nothing. My thighs wrapped around his hips, and he carried me across the room, knocking over a chair on the way. The thud didn't matter. The world didn't exist outside this room. The couch wouldn't do. Neither of us wanted soft or quiet. He set me on the wooden table beside the fire, one hand behind my neck, the other gripping my thigh. His mouth found the base of my throat. I arched into him. "You feel this?" He growled against my skin. "This is what it's been like. Every day without you." I slid my hands down his back, pulled him in until there was no space, no breath, no question. Then, "Take me," I said. "Now." Clothes vanished, his shirt first, mine second, buttons skittering across the floor like bullets. I pulled him down onto me, the table creaking beneath us. Skin met skin. His fingers traced the curve of my waist, not trembling this time. Mine found the line of his jaw, the scar near his collarbone. I memorized him in motion, every breath, every gasp, every low growl when I bit his lip too hard. We moved like we were making up for every night lost. Every word we'd never said. It wasn't polished. It was need. The fire cracked louder behind us, throwing shadows up the walls. He kissed, down my ribs, across my hip, every movement deliberate. When I pulled him back up, he hovered just above me, staring down like he didn't know how we got here. "You're not afraid?" he whispered. "I was," I said. "Of you. Of this." I wrapped my arms around his shoulders, pulled him closer, until our foreheads touched. But now, I'm done being afraid. When he finally pushed into me, we both went still. The world narrowed to breath and heat, and the sound of wood shifting beneath us. His hands gripped the edge of the table. Mine gripped him. The first movement broke something open in both of us. A moan I didn't expect tore from my throat. He caught it with his mouth, and then he let go. He moved like he had something to prove and something to surrender. There was no rhythm at first, just push and pull, and the sharp sound of our bodies meeting. The table groaned under us. So did I. He cursed into my skin when I dragged, my nails down his back, bit my shoulder when I wrapped my legs tighter. "You drive me insane," he said, teeth at my jaw. "Good," I whispered. "I want you ruined for anyone else." We didn't stop until we were shaking, until the fire dimmed and our bodies were slick with sweat, and our breath came ragged and raw. And when he came, he groaned my name like it was breaking him open. I pulled him down with me, both of us still, tangled, still connected, foreheads pressed, limbs numb. The fire flickered its last. The snow outside had started again, but I was warm. I was whole. Later, we lay in the bed upstairs. Sheets tangled, arms wrapped. He kissed the top of my spine, slow, like it was the first time again. "That was..." he started. "Finally," I finished. He chuckled softly. His hand brushed down my back, resting on my hip. Steady, possessive, home. "You're mine," he whispered. No edge in his voice this time. Just awe. "I was always mine," I said, turning to face him. "But now I choose you." He smiled into my mouth as he kissed me again. And this time, there was no more rush. Just love. He used to say I was his like a threat. Now, he says it like a prayer. I woke to sunlight warming my shoulder and the weight of his arm across my waist. No alarms, no shadows, just the hush of snow outside the window, and the steady rhythm of his breathing against the back of my neck. For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, I didn't feel like I needed to run. I didn't feel like I owed anyone anything. Not my silence, not my body, not my forgiveness. I had chosen to be here, and I would keep choosing him, as long as he kept choosing me back. I turned slowly, careful not to wake him. His face was relaxed, eyes closed, lashes dark against his cheek. His hand rested over my hip bone, thumb twitching lightly in sleep like he couldn't bear to let go, even unconsciously. There were lines around his eyes I hadn't noticed before. Tension that used to live in his jaw was gone. His bare chest rose and fell, warm against mine. He looked real. Not a CEO, not a legend, not the man who once bought a bride like a business solution. Just a man. Mine. He stirred when I touched his cheek. Eyes blinked open, soft gray in the morning light. His gaze locked on mine immediately, as if waking up wasn't something he allowed to happen without full awareness. "You stayed," he murmured, voice rough with sleep. I smiled. "So did you." His brow creased for a moment, then smoothed, when I kissed the center of his chest, right where his heart beat steady and unguarded. "What time is it?" he asked. "Too early." "Good. I'm not done memorizing you yet." We stayed like that for hours, not speaking much, just tracing the stories on each other's skin. Lines earned, scars hidden, soft places we used to shield from the world. His fingers slid over the inside of my wrist, the same place where he once saw a scratch and said nothing. Now, he kissed it gently, like it was sacred. We finally got up when the light filled the whole room. I wore one of his shirts. He made breakfast. Better this time, edible at least. We sat cross-legged on the floor, plates balanced on knees, watching. Snow drift outside like we were inside a snow globe no one could shake. "What now?" I asked quietly. He glanced at me, then at the fire, and answered without hesitation. "We go back. Together." To New York? Eventually, but not as who we were. We build something new. From scratch. You sure? Not even a little. He laughed, surprised at himself. But for the first time, I don't need to be sure to move forward. I just need you next to me. I leaned in, rested my head against his shoulder. The fire crackled. Outside, someone shoveled a driveway. Life, simple and unstaged, happened around us. I wasn't afraid of it anymore. I wasn't afraid of anything. We stayed in Montana a few more weeks, walked trails, fixed the truck, read books aloud to each other at night. He learned how to make coffee that didn't taste like engine oil. I learned how to trust the quiet. Some nights I caught him watching me while I brushed my hair or tied my boots. "What?" I'd ask. He'd shake his head. "Just making sure you're still real." And every time I would walk over, kiss him softly and whisper, "More real than anything you ever tried to control." Before we left, we drove back to the place where we'd found each other again, where the road curved dangerously and the snow had nearly taken us both. He stopped the truck. We got out. No words, just snow, wind, the memory of surrender. He took my hand, pressed something small into my palm, a key. "It's for the house we'll build," he said. "I don't know where yet. But when we find the land, I'll build it myself. No architects, no skyscrapers, just us." I swallowed against the lump in my throat. "What if I want to help?" He smiled. "Then I'll hand you the hammer." That night, back in the cabin, we curled into each other again. But this time, there was no fire lit. No storm outside. Just blankets, skin, and the kind of warmth you don't make with kindling. I lay against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. He stroked my back with slow fingers, the kind that didn't ask, just belonged. "You know," he said softly, "I used to think love was a transaction. And now? Now I think it's the only thing worth losing control over." I looked up at him. "You lost control the night you let me leave." "No," he said. "I lost it the night I let you back in." We didn't say forever. We didn't have to. But just before I fell asleep, he whispered something against my hair. the same words he used to say in the beginning, only now, with reverence instead of ownership. Mine. Pause. Forever. And this time, I whispered back, yours. Willingly. If this story moved you, even just a little, go ahead and hit that like button. And if you want more heart-stealing, soul-healing love stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe. Your support keeps these stories alive.